Hey there, welcome back to Creepy Encounters. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the videos. What's the most compelling paranormal thing you've experienced? Did it change your worldview? Serious. Friend always said he had a haunted house and adjacent woods, said some wild stories that I never seriously thought to be true. During a sleepover he commented on seeing floating balls of light. I was the only one up when everyone went to bed, then felt weird and looked into the dining room. I saw a floating ball of light, which then rapidly expanded without a single sound and briefly blinded me. It expanded slower than light should have. I have no idea what it was. Some kind of phenomenon, maybe? It mostly made me consider all the other stories he said that were much more extreme, like weird cryptids in the forest. He never said them in a manner that seemed joking or the like, just idle information. Didn't change much. My other paranormal experience happened when I was so young the memory is much less reliable, although it was a lot more extreme. As a teenager, I was exploring an old abandoned barn with some friends. In the other room, two of my friends suddenly freaked out and yelled that we needed to get out of there, so we all bolted. Once we were out, they explained they saw a ball of light descend from the ceiling, hang there for a couple of seconds, and then quickly drop into the floor and disappear. Both saw it at the same time, both didn't say a word to each other until they yelled for us to get out of there. So interesting to hear you had a similar experience. So way back in 2004 I was living with my grandparents after moving to their city. I have a large family and many of my cousins have lived with them at some point. My grandparents were well off financially and lived in a large 100-plus-year-old house, so space and money weren't an issue. Anyways, at that point I had a job with a large retail company that involved travel. Lots of it. Trips lasted from several weeks to months gone. I basically left my stuff at my grandparents' while I was gone. On this particular trip I was heading home from Ohio, with a layover in TX. I had this overwhelming need to call my grandparents to remind them I was coming home, but this trip involved an 80-hour work week, not including the flight time, so I never made the call. When we landed in TX, I had 45 missed calls and voicemails on my phone. All from family. My grandfather had killed himself in the backyard, about 45 minutes after I had decided to not call. I stumbled out of the plane and proceeded to put down shots until the bartender cut me off. A coworker found me and made sure I got on the plane. My parents picked me up once I got home. I told my grandma I would stay as long as she wanted. I was due to move into an apt in 3 weeks after that trip. That night after she went to bed, I went into the room the family referred to as the Red Room, as at one point it had this red flocked wallpaper above the wood paneling. This room is where my grandfather spent most of his time. It had a fireplace next to where he would sit and read. He was a voracious reader and only would sit in his chair. So I sat in a rocking chair across from where he would sit, and I bawled. For hours. I talked to him like he was there. When I got up to go to bed, I stood up and touched his chair. It was warm, as if someone was sitting there for hours. Now mind you, this is a leather chair, and it was warm in the area where he would have sat only. Other parts were cool to the touch as you would expect. I had massive guilt for years for not calling, and to this day I cannot explain why the seat was warm. There isn't a logical explanation. I was at a bar about 8 years ago, had a pretty good buzz going, and I walked down the hallway to the restroom, and around the corner comes a little boy. He was maybe 6 or 7, he had on black pants and a white button-down shirt, and he had short dark hair. Now it's 1 in the morning, and there's a little kid in the bar. He stopped when he saw me, and just looked at me. I said, "Hey buddy, are you here with someone?" And he got this really shocked look on his face and vanished. Like, he didn't move, he disappeared. However, as I mentioned, I'd been drinking, so I just blew it off. Cut to 6 months later, I started bartending at that bar. I was working day shift, and when the owner came in at 4 p.m., I told him that I didn't know there was an apartment above the bar and it must suck to have to listen to the bar all night, especially with little kids. He asked me what the hell I was talking about. I told him I'd been listening to the kids upstairs playing and laughing and running around all day. He walked me up to the 2nd floor. It's not an apartment. It's a huge, empty room. One night I was closing the bar at 3:30 in the morning, and I went to the bathroom before I left. I was the only one there, and the doors were locked. I hear knocking on the bathroom door and a little kid giggling. No one was there when I opened the door. That Christmas, I bought a rubber ball and a toy truck and a doll and left them upstairs in the empty room. For the next several months I would hear the ball bouncing across the wooden floor upstairs while I was working. It made me smile. They were just kids, at least they finally had some toys. My dad had a workshop in the basement. I was in bed sleeping and all of a sudden I heard some tools going off downstairs. I was trying to figure out why on earth my dad would be down there so late at night, so I went to get up to investigate. As I passed by his room, I heard him snore. He was fast asleep, also he's deaf, so no way he was waking up from the noise. Needless to say, I ran back to bed and pulled the covers over my head. My family also experienced a bunch of odd stuff in that house, like the workshop door handle jiggling or seeing a figure in the darkness. Even had our dog break into the house via the tiny basement window, shattering it and jumping the 8 feet to get in. That basement definitely had something going on, and I've absolutely hated being in basements by myself ever since. My grandma's boyfriend passed away and my mom and I traveled to Florida to help her make the arrangements. My grandma had a 2-bedroom condo in a gated community, so my mom took the second bedroom and I took the couch. I woke up at 4:19 a.m. and heard old-timey music. Figured my grandma was awake early and tried to go back to sleep. Then I heard shuffling down the hall. Figured my mom was going to the bathroom. But then I heard someone sigh and sit down in the leather recliner next to the couch that he always sat in. I immediately knew it was him. Later in the day we visited his kids, not related to us, and my mom kept trying to get me to tell his oldest daughter. I told my mom I didn't want to upset her. She overheard and asked me to tell her. So I explained what happened. Her eyes got all wide and she looked at her husband. Apparently her husband woke up in the middle of the night, looked straight at her and told her father was there and that he was okay. That wasn't my first experience with the paranormal, but certainly one I could never forget. I don't usually tell stories on Reddit, but here goes. One night when I lived with my parents, they were out of town and my GF and I were just hanging out and watching movies in the basement. Not scary movies and completely sober. We're talking and playing on our phones and all of a sudden the internet goes out. So I go up to the top floor, 2 stories up to reboot the router and the power strip is gone. It had lamps, router, and other stuff plugged into it. All of it was unplugged and the power strip was just gone. I grabbed a gun and cleared the house, but it was just unexplainable. We never found it. I work nights at a hotel and part of it is setting up coffee in the morning. Before COVID, that took place at 3 a.m. So I was looking for the tea box. The cabinets where it might be kept are facing directly into the kitchen. There's a buffet bar and a locked door between guest space and the kitchen. Everything is very dark except for the light pouring into the kitchen from the back hallway. And that's where I see him. There's a man there watching me. He's about 6.5 feet tall and wearing an olive green jacket. We spend a long minute staring at each other, until suddenly he lifted both legs at the knees and floated out of the kitchen into the hall. I didn't initially think ghost. I thought guest. I chased him through the locked door into the back hallway and spent 5 minutes searching for him, getting angrier and angrier that some asshole was hiding back here. I never found him. And it took me a little while to accept why. People don't just float. People don't just vanish. Either I had met a god-tier magician or this was a fucking ghost. There's been a few ghost sightings at the hotel since then, but that's the one I always find myself coming back to. My sister and I were watching TV in my room when this black sphere a little smaller than a basketball appeared right below my ceiling. We didn't yell or run away, we watched it. Very slowly it moved down until it went past the foot of my bed so we couldn't see it anymore. We looked at each other and then we jumped up and ran downstairs. Another time, same house, my friend had slept over. In the morning we were laying in bed talking about where we wanted to get breakfast. As we're talking, a big bottle of cocoa butter that I had on my vanity mirror moved forward across the vanity about 6 inches and then shot to the floor. My friend immediately asked if we could go downstairs. Lol, that house was built in the 1840s and we had so many experiences there, even my stepdad did, and before that he didn't really believe in that stuff. I have a ton of stories if anyone's interested. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe for more real life creepy encounters around the world. See you in the next video. Bye.